Turks, Jake Uger, Anna Kasparian on a giant news day. I mean, the last couple of hours.
No. Don't get it twisted, Uger. Not the last couple of hours, especially the last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
A lot of news broke in the last 30 minutes, right before showtime. And I just want to thank the news cycle for, giving me this wonderful situation to deal with 30 minutes before showtime.
God bless. Okay, listen, guys. We got, not only do we have stories on Donald Trump's sexual abuse verdict, Tucker Carlson, we know where he's going now. If you haven't heard that, we have important details for you guys. And Tucker begins the war against Fox. That just broke as well, let alone the story on George Santos that just broke.
They call them dumps.
It's a massive news dump, and it happened right before we got started. But we're ready, we're cleansed and we're ready, okay?
Oh my God.
Okay, so we're quoting Trump, Okay, here we go, let's do it.
Well, why don't we begin with a big verdict when it comes to Donald Trump.
The verdict right now is on the question of whether or not Mr. Trump raped E. Jean Carroll. The jury has found him, has said no. But on the question of whether or not she was sexually abused by the former president and whether or not he forcibly touched her, the jury has come back and said yes. They have found him liable for sexually abusing and forcibly touching E. Jean Carroll back in 1996.
That's Fox News announcing the verdict in the civil trial against Donald Trump. And that civil trial, of course, had to do with sexual assault allegations against Trump by writer E. Jean Carroll, along with defamation accusations after Trump not only denied sexually assaulting her in the 1990s, but then proceeded to say that he wouldn't have done it because she's not his type. Now, there's more on the defamation charge, which I think is interesting. But before we get to that, I just want to quickly note that while this is a loss for Trump, clearly, he is now ordered to pay $5 million in damages to E. Jean Carroll. The MAGA team has already spun this as a big win because they have not found him guilty of rape, just sexual abuse. What a winner. Let's hear more.
This jury has found that former President Trump did defame E. Jean Carroll. They have found him liable for defamation, and they say that he must pay $2 million to E. Jean Carroll for the battery charge. No word yet on how much they have allotted in terms of the defamation charge. And remember, this defamation charge was about those. They have the burden of proof for defamation was that it had to be clear and convincing that the statements made about E. Jean Carroll were not only false, but that they were done maliciously and out of hatred or ill will, spite, or recklessness. And they have found that he is liable for defamation.
So the burden of proof for defamation in this civil case was made clear in that description, but the burden of proof when it comes to the allegation of sexual assault, it is not as difficult as it would be if this were a criminal trial. This is not a criminal trial. The statute of limitations has run out because of the fact that this allegedly happened in the 1990s. So E. Jean Carroll came forward with a civil lawsuit, and the burden of proof when it comes to accusations of sexual assault for a civil lawsuit happened to be much lower. The burden of proof is a preponderance of evidence. So I wanted to make that clear. If this were a criminal trial, I don't know how that would play out because again, the burden of proof would have to be much stronger. Now, Carroll told jurors that Trump had raped her in a Bergdorf Goodman dressing room in New York City. We covered those accusations at the time. Carroll took the witness stand. So did two women who testified. She had told them right after the alleged incident that Trump had raped her. Two other women testified that Trump had kissed and groped them without their consent in incidents that occurred years apart. And I have to go to this first video from the deposition because the deposition was a disaster for Donald Trump. At first, he was asked about the Access Hollywood tapes, the infamous Access Hollywood tapes, and here's how he handled it.
In this video, I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet, just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the you can do anything. That's what you said, correct?
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by
Well, if you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
And you consider yourself to be a star?
I think you can say that, yeah.
It also didn't help him when he confused E. Jean Carroll for his ex-wife, Marla Maples. That happened during the deposition too. Let's just quickly watch that.
I don't even know who the woman. Let's see. I don't know who. It's Marla.
You're saying Marla's in this photo?
That's Marla. Yeah, that's my wife.
Which woman are you pointing to? No.
Here.
Carol.
Oh, that,
the person you just pointed to was
I
E.
see.
Jean Carroll.
Who is that? Who is this?
Point, your wife. And the woman on the right is your then wife.
I don't know.
Ivana?
This was the picture. I assume that's John Johnson. Is that?
That's Carol.
Because it's very blurry.
I mean, so blurry apparently that he confused the woman that it was currently suing him with his ex-wife, Marla Maples. Absolute insanity.
Okay, and obviously that's relevant because he said, I've never, E. Jean Carroll, she's too unattractive for me to sexually assault. Well, if you thought she looks like your ex-wife, that's unlikely to be true. Well, look, guys, here's the major story here. Number one, whenever Donald Trump goes to court, he loses. He never has any evidence. He's a pathological liar. And in court, it's not a matter of marketing and PR, which is his expertise. And you can't get your cult to come with you and vote inside the jury room. No, you have to present evidence. And the only evidence they had was Trump's deposition. He refused to testify. Afterwards, he declared that it was unconstitutional how they silenced him. He could have gone and testified at any moment. He chose not to. Again, like with his audience, those lies work perfectly. They're like, I can't believe they silenced him, even though he chose not to testify, okay? They don't care, they love it, they believe the lie. And by the way, a lot of them don't even know that it's a lie, okay? So some of them know and think, awesome, we're the best liars, right? So of course he loses in court. Trump loses in court every time.
But did he, Cenk? Did he? Because they didn't find him guilty of rape. They just found him guilty of sexual battery.
Yeah, so Anna's right.
I'm being sarcastic, by the way. Sexual battery is very bad. But the fact that
of course. But actually, but that's our point. It's not, of course, to the right wing. If you go on social media right now, they're bragging. They're like, yeah, that's right. Didn't get him on rape. He only sexually abused her and lied about it all this time and tried to smear her and ruin her. Attaboy! Really? So guys, this is why we're at such a critical juncture in our history, and it's so hard for us to understand one another. Because our side, we view to be the rational, logical side, and we prove it in court every time when things are based on evidence, right? Goes, that's a monster bragging about sexual abuse and going, maybe it's fortunate that stars can sexually assault people, right? The other side looks at it and goes, A, I don't believe anything bad said about my cult leader / prophet. B, I don't care. I don't care that he sexually abused her. I don't care that he lied about it. I don't care that he lost. I don't care that he's a pathological liar. All I care is he hates the same people I hate. And by the way, I'm super mad at the system, the government, the elites, establishment, and this guy says he's against them. I'm signing up. I don't care what happens. So look, guys, the one thing that is absolutely clear is that all this talk in mainstream media about, oh my God, the Republican voters, once they find out, boy, those Republicans in the suburbs are gonna turn. They're not going to turn. They don't care. Stop pretending that they care. Stop pretending like it's gonna make a difference. So yes, he of course did the sexual assault, and of course he lost. And now he's gonna have to pay $5 million. I don't even know if he has $5 million. He's of course lying about how rich he is. So, but I haven't seen it move one single Republican voter, at least in social media.
No, I mean, I don't think that Trump's character flaws, and we've seen the entirety of the media establishment, corporate media, hyper focus on Trump's character flaws as a way of persuading Republican voters to abandon him. That has not worked. I think there's some value in pointing those things out when it comes to some of the independent voters who sometimes lean closer to the right, sometimes lean closer to the left. You never know how they're gonna vote, right? They're swing voters. But with that said, I mean, I think the problem and what's missing from that equation is, for Republicans, it's like, okay, so Trump does these terrible things, right? Some of them don't mind the terrible things. I wanna be clear about that. Some of them might not like the terrible things, but they're willing to overlook it because what do the Democrats give them as an alternative option, right?
Yeah.
Joe Biden? And I'm not equating Joe Biden to Donald Trump, okay? Joe Biden, I think, is a decent human being. But Joe Biden, in terms of his leadership, in terms of what he has to offer to the American people, in terms of what he has shown his leadership to be during his first term, there isn't much to offer, right? And I think that is part of the problem that gets left out of the equation, certainly for corporate media outlets like MSNBC. That again, just hyper focus on the character flaws for Trump and then provide cover for the very real policy and leadership flaws that you see with the Biden administration.
So two things Anna mentioned there I think are enormously important and need to be emphasized. So number one is when you look at the character flaws of Donald Trump, a lot of us go, well, then I would eliminate him because I think that the person is so abhorrent that I'm not even gonna have a conversation about it, right? But a lot of voters, right or wrong, say, yes, but how does it affect my life?
That's exactly right.
Okay, and so when you say, hey, Joe Biden's a good guy who has these certain personality characteristics, etc. And he's like, they'll say stupid things like, he's from Scranton, he's a real guy from Scranton. Okay, dude, he was from Scranton literally 80 years ago, and no one cares. It doesn't affect our lives if he's from Scranton or not, right? And so for a lot of these Republican voters and some independent voters, unfortunately a decent amount, they go, yeah, okay, I get it, Trump's a bad guy, but I don't care. How does it affect my life? Now, I think their calculation on how it affects their life is totally wrong because Trump is not here to help them.
That
right?
I agree with.
But unfortunately, neither is Biden. So you can argue about, hey, it's a difference in kind or a difference in degree, right? And we'll have that I hope we don't have it in the general election, but we probably will, okay? That conversation. But guys, that leads to the second point. There is a very easy, I know it doesn't sound easy because no one in media says it, right? Way to get those independents that swing those elections. And that almost certainly will swing the 2024 election. You offer them an alternative that also hates the establishment, but is actually going to do things for them. You win in a landslide, in a goddamn landslide, okay? Somebody who gets up and goes, you know what? The system is screwing you. They did strip you of your economic dignity and they do make you work for corporate rule and the politicians are corrupt, right? And now we're gonna fight back and we're gonna get you higher wages, better healthcare, etc. That guy wins in a landslide, but corporate media, which is mainstream media and right-wing media, work together to make sure that populace from the left never arises.
That's exactly right.
They take all the oxygen out of the room. They'll tell you that Biden, who's a miserable candidate, is your only choice. You must obey. We don't agree. We're gonna find another choice. We're gonna run him against Biden, we're gonna run him against Trump, and we're gonna win.
Finally, I have to give you Trump's reaction to this. His first Truth Social post following the verdict was a simple one. I have, in all caps, I have absolutely no idea who this woman is. Well, that was clear based on your deposition. The verdict is a disgrace, a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time. So he then, of course, posted other things and just kept going on and on and on. And look, the witch hunt angle, the witch hunt commentary isn't just spewed by Donald Trump. There is a chorus of right-wing media that incessantly repeats that same message over and over again. So that's something else to take into consideration. We are dealing with information bubbles, news bubbles, where both sides are living in completely different realities based on the news that they consume. And that is a huge problem. And I think that's something that we need to also tackle in addition to the dysfunction and corruption that we have in both our media and our politics.
100%. So look, last thing on this, do not try to convince Republicans that Donald Trump's a bad guy. Total waste of energy. They know, they don't care. But the independents can be swayed, but you're not going to sway them with Donald Trump committed sexual assault, because they already know what a terrible guy he is. You have to sway them with actually doing something positive in their lives.
Let's take a break. There's more on Tucker breaking as we speak, so let's regroup on that story, and when we come back, we'll tell you what Tucker's next big media venture will be, and we'll also tell you about how the Justice Department has gone after and filed criminal charges against George Santos, the freshman Republican lawmaker. And
now that Tucker has landed, the ego has landed, his war against Fox has commenced, and there's amazing details about that too. So stay right here, we'll be right back.
They want to make you drink Starbucks every day from now until forever.
Back on TYT, let's go to our members. Boomer Dragon Cat says, on top of the world, so glad Trump has finally held to some account for his abuse of women over the years. It will never be enough, but it's way better than nothing. Look, that's really true. And I wanna emphasize, I'm not sure I emphasize it enough, and that's why I love doing the show with our members. So at least we got some degree of justice here. And at least Donald Trump has to pay her $5 million, right? That's gonna hurt the big guy, and I like that it hurts him, okay? At least it's on the record. Yes, he sexually assaulted her, and he's now been found guilty of that, even if it's a civil trial. And E. Jean Carroll gets to sleep better at night going, I was right, and I've been vindicated. And that's a big deal. So thank you for bringing our attention back to that. Jenks Left Triceps of Fury says, there must have been a doozy of a tantrum at Mar-a-Lago today. Indeed, somebody's cleaning ketchup off the walls. Art Guy says, so do we get to call him convicted sexual predator Donald Trump all the time now? I vote yes. So I'm gonna look into that as to whether you can, so we'll come up with plenty of names, brother, don't worry, okay? But certainly you can call him anything you like, man. Have fun, go nuts, and you're certainly justified in that. Seth Michael Draginski says, I love you guys and what you do so much. I've been yelling at the top of my lungs in victory, and my husband said, stop yelling like Cenk, you're not on the TV. That's really funny. Okay, love to you and your husband, thanks for watching. Wano says, won't be long now before Trump releases a new set of not a rapist themed NFTs. He did put his mugshot, a quasi mugshot, on t-shirts and sell them. So I don't know if he'll do it again, like, hey, only committed sexual assault. Would they buy those t-shirts? Some of them would, okay, keeping it real. Skittlebutt Dragon Rasp is a little too excited on Twitch and says, down goes Donald. Kind of. Man, that day when Donald Trump is definitively no longer in politics, whew, you don't want to miss the celebration here when that happens. Fidel Castro says big, massive news.
They call them dumps.
Okay, Dave Schmidt 311 says, hi, a beautiful TYT family. We appreciate a Metal Turtle 571 gifted 5 tier 1 subs, and we appreciate that for sure. And VG Hero also gifted a sub. And Christina Elisa Brown says on YouTube members site, Woo, let's go. Anna, you're a pro. You got this. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Lots of our members are writing in, for example, Sterling Nash saying, happy to see this victim receive some vindication. And I do want to emphasize that E. Jean Carroll with excellent vindication in this court case that found Trump guilty of the sexual assault against her and the defamation. And I appreciate all the members bringing that up. You too can become a member by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube or going to tyt.com/join. We can't do the show without the members. You guys make us stronger, allow us to do honest reporting. Casper.
Big story involving Tucker Carlson. Let's do it.
Starting soon, we'll be bringing a new version of the show we've been doing for the last 6.5 years to Twitter. We'll be bringing some other things too, which we'll tell you about. But for now, we're just grateful to be here. Free speech is the main right that you have. Without it, you have no others. See you soon.
A mere 2 weeks after Tucker Carlson was fired from Fox News, he announced that he will be doing a version of his Fox News show on Twitter of all places. But this story, which is currently developing as we speak, just keeps getting more interesting because it turns out that Tucker is also taking legal action against Fox News, accusing them of fraud and breach of contract. Now we'll get into more details on that in just a moment, but before we do, why don't we dive into the video that he posted on Twitter, making this big announcement about what his next media venture will be. Let's watch.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. You often hear people say the news is full of lies, but most of the time that's not exactly right. Much of what you see on television or read the New York Times is in fact true in the literal sense. It could pass one of the media's own fact checks. Lawyers would be willing to sign off on it. In fact, they may have. But that doesn't make it true. It's not true. At the most basic level, the news you consume is a lie of the stealthiest and most insidious kind. Facts have been withheld on purpose, along with proportion and perspective. You are being manipulated. How does that work? Let's see. If I tell you that a man has been unjustly arrested for armed robbery, that is not, strictly speaking, a lie. He may have been framed. At this point, there's been no trial, so no one can really say. But if I don't mention the fact that the same man has been arrested for the same crime 6 times before, am I really informing you? No, I'm not. I'm misleading you. And that's what the news media are doing in every story that matters, every day of the week, every week of the year.
So there you have it. The man who misled his audience and literally lied to them because he knew that they wanted to hear certain things is now saying that he is a warrior for truth and free speech. Fascinating stuff there, Cenk.
No, but the great irony here and what's frustrating to me is that all the things that he just said in that particular clip are absolutely true.
They are.
In fact, the first 2/3 of his video until he gets to Twitter are true. He tells you what we tell you all the time. In fact, he's almost copying us, almost word for word, in what our criticism of mainstream media, and by the way, Fox News and the rest of corporate media is. The problem is, he's the biggest liar on TV. We have the text absolutely positively proving it. So this guy's a master manipulator. He tells you something that at its core that is true, and then uses it to lie to you. It's amazing. He's a master propagandist, but there's more video and more discussion of what he's gonna do next.
So while he talks about the importance of speaking freely, he implies pretty heavily in this video that he was unable to speak his mind or speak freely while he was at Fox.
What's it like to work in a system like that? After more than 30 years in the middle of it, we could tell you stories. The best you can hope for in the news business at this point is the freedom to tell the fullest truth that you can. But there are always limits. And you know that if you bump up against those limits often enough, you will be fired for it. That's not a guess, it's guaranteed. Every person who works in English language media understands that. The rule of what you can't say defines everything. It's filthy, really, and it's utterly corrupting.
So I have a lot to say about that, because fact of the matter is, regardless of where you work, whether it's pressure from your employer or pressure from your audience, the ability to speak freely in this country right now is it's incredibly difficult to do. Let's just keep it real, right? In his case, I mean, it seems like he's making an accusation against Fox News, but let's also remember, Cenk, that he felt that he needed to lie to the audience about the election being stolen from Donald Trump because he knew that was exactly what they wanted to hear. He wanted a reporter who fact-checked one of Trump's tweets to get fired because the audience didn't like that. That was negatively impacting the value of Fox News's stock, right? So like, whether it's the audience or the employer, free speech in the context of news in America is real difficult to come by.
So his critique, again, the second part of the video, 100% agree. It is corrupting. You do have limits. You will be fired. So I wasn't fired, but I was pushed out because of a very similar situation at MSNBC. Those things are all true. But then if all you did, the great irony, guys, is if all you did was watch that video, you would have the same problem that he explained in the first part that we showed you. You just hear about the guy who got arrested once, and you wouldn't hear the rest of the story. You wouldn't hear that he got arrested 6 times. You wouldn't hear the full context. So if you just see that video, you go, well, that does sound true about American media. But the full context is, this guy is patient zero.
Absolutely.
He did it, he told those lies on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. He's the one guy that was on every cable station and told a different lie at each cable station he went to. Isn't that amazing? And at Fox News, it's definitive. We have the text saying, I hate Donald Trump. He's a monster, he's a destroyer.
He's a demonic force.
He's a demonic force. And then he goes on air and goes, Donald Trump, the one guy who's great and telling you the truth. What a preposterous, gigantic liar, trying to take on the mantle of something that is true about the media. It is, but to be fair to him, it is a brilliant deception for him to do the very thing he's complaining about within that video. Amazing.
Right, and to take the mantle of fierce truth teller who wants to speak his mind. Now let's get to the part of the video where he makes the big announcement about his partnership with Twitter.
Amazingly, as of tonight, there aren't many platforms left that allow free speech. The last big one remaining in the world, the only one, is Twitter, where we are now. Twitter has long served as the place where our national conversation incubates and develops. Twitter is not a partisan site. Everybody's allowed here, and we think that's a good thing. And yet, for the most part, the news that you see analyzed on Twitter comes from media organizations that are themselves thinly disguised propaganda outlets. You see it on cable news, you talk about it on Twitter. The result may feel like a debate, but actually the gatekeepers are still in charge. We think that's a bad system. We know exactly how it works, and we're sick of it. Starting soon, we'll be bringing a new version of the show we've been doing for the last 6.5 years to Twitter. We'll be bringing some other things too, which we'll tell you about. But for now, we're just grateful to be here. Free speech is the main right that you have. Without it, you have no others. See you soon.
So he is planning to forego the rest of his Fox News contract, meaning what remains of the money that they're supposed to pay him as a result of his contract, which is up in January of 2025. So it's definitely gonna be more than $20 million. But he is also, again, pursuing legal action against Fox News and is accusing them of breaching the contract first, which makes the exclusivity clause invalid, according to him. So I'm gonna give you more details about that impending legal action in just a moment. But Cenk, it's curious to me that he's going in this weird Twitter direction when Twitter's been malfunctioning quite a bit. No. Like, what's going on?
No, I totally get it. The minute I saw it, I was like, of course, I should have thought of that earlier. Why? What did I tell you guys? Newsmax and Rumble and all those guys, I don't think they could really afford them. They might be able to give him 20 million or 40 million for a short-term contract, but they just don't have that kind of money and they don't have that kind of audience, and it's not sustainable. The platforms, on the other hand, especially if they change their algorithms, all Elon Musk has to do is press a button and goes, everybody gets Tucker Carlson's show served to them. He will have millions upon millions of, anybody that does a show like that would get millions of viewers, okay? It just needs Elon to press a freaking button. And who's the one guy rich enough to be able to offer Tucker Carlson more than $20 million a year, which is what he's foregoing from Fox by breaking the contract? Well, of course, Elon Musk. Elon Musk already burned $44 billion on Twitter. He'd be almost irrational not to do this.
Okay, but I'm trying to understand what that would look like. What would a show?
Super easy. They already had one, so I could tell you about it.
Okay, go ahead.
So what they do is you know how if you're on, whether mainly on a desktop, laptop, etc., but it's featured in different ways on your apps on the phone, but they put it next to trending. There's a video. There used to be a morning show on Twitter in a previous administration, and you see the video going on the side. And plus, they could serve that video to all of the users, right? Or a huge percentage of the users. When you send out a tweet, it only goes to a certain percentage. So let's take me as an example. I've roughly 500,000 followers, right? But when I send a tweet, it doesn't go to all of them.
Yeah, it only goes to people who hate Follow Jake for some reason.
Yeah,
that's what it seems like.
But every platform has an algorithm where they say, hey, it goes to 12% of your audience, 10%, 8%. Now Facebook, it only goes to a small percentage, and you could purchase the ability to send it to more of your own audience, your own followers, okay? So, but all they have to do is change the algorithm and say, for this particular video, send it to everyone. Now, all of a sudden, hundreds of millions of people are gonna get it. And that is incredibly powerful. None of the other platforms have chosen to do that. And look, I've talked about this in the past. I think YouTube, Facebook, etc., they keep their Ferraris in the garage, especially YouTube. I don't know why they don't unleash them, but they don't. Here, you think Elon Musk is going to have any kind of constraints? No, he's gonna pay Tucker a lot of money, and then he's gonna press that button, and he's gonna send it to everyone. And so this is actually, look, our job is to be honest with you guys. I don't like Tucker, I don't like Elon, but this is probably a brilliant move. It's probably gonna work spectacularly. So that's my real opinion.
I'm a little more skeptical than you are. Let's see how this plays out. I mean, you would need to invest in the platform, and Elon Musk, aside from investing his own personal money, has done the opposite.
Oh, you're right, Anna, that's a good point. I mean, could Elon screw it up? I mean, he screwed up everything at Twitter, right?
And he fired pretty important key employees that helped with the functionality of the platform.
Yeah, it's glitchy as all hell. So he's gonna have to reinvest in the platform if he wants this to work. And so don't get me wrong, 1,000 things could go wrong. But if the news today was he's going with Newsmax, I'd have told you that's the end of his career. He's starting something on his own. I'd say, good luck, brother. I told you yesterday, that's a very tough thing to do, to run a business in the digital media space on your own. But if you go with a giant platform with one of the richest men in the world financing you, that makes a lot of sense and is likely to work. Now, in terms of his battle with Fox, look, he played that one smart too. Our job is to be honest.
Can I give them the details on what he's doing here? Okay, great. So he is accusing Fox of fraud and also breaching the contract, which would make the exclusivity clause invalid, according to the lawyer representing him. And that lawyer is a pretty high-powered lawyer named Brian Friedman. So he sends a letter to executives over at Fox News, and in that letter, the accusation is that Fox broke an agreement with Carlson, get a load of this, not to leak his private communications to the media and not to use Carlson's private messages to take any adverse employment action against him. It is very obvious that someone at Fox News is leaking tape to the press, which is why we've been covering those leaked tapes. We've been covering all sorts of content of Tucker Carlson. He's mic'd up, and it's probably during breaks or before he goes live. The only people who would have access to that are individuals over at Fox. The letter also alleges that Fox broke promises not to settle with Dominion voting systems in a way which would indicate wrongdoing on the part of Carlson, and not to take action or any actions in a settlement that would harm Carlson's reputation. And Carlson was told by a member of the Fox board that he was taken off the air as part of the Dominion settlement, according to two sources briefed on a conversation, and they spoke to Axios about this. Carlson is also claiming, finally, that Briganti, who's one of the executives over at Fox, Fox's longtime communications and PR chief, attempted to undermine, embarrass, and interfere with Carlson's future business prospects, which he maintains would constitute another breach of his employment contract. So that is what he's accusing them of. I don't know if this is going to get to a point where they're going to, if he's actually going to file a civil lawsuit against Fox. If he does, I mean, he's going to have to provide evidence and he has to make his case. We'll see how that plays out. But these are some pretty serious accusations, and it's clear to me that he just wants out of that contract so he can start this new media venture with Twitter.
So I read all the details of all the things that he's accusing Fox of, and I would summarize it this way. He's got a fighter's chance. So meaning like he makes an argument that you guys broke the contract because the leaks that you're doing, maybe it's part of the Dominion settlement. They say it's definitely not part of the Dominion settlement. If Tucker's right about that, he's almost definitely gonna get paid. But Dominion denies it, etc. But there's like 4 or 5 different things that he lists where I go, maybe. And remember, the question there is who broke the contract first? And so when it's a maybe, what happens next is you go to court and eventually both sides go, this is too expensive to fight and for one of us to lose, and usually they settle. So then what's gonna happen? Tucker's gonna get the money from Elon Musk, and then he's probably gonna settle with Fox News and get a big chunk of money. Maybe he doesn't get the whole 25-30 that they owe him now, right? But for the rest of his contract, maybe he only gets 10-15, good enough. He's still gonna get a world of money from Elon Musk anyway, so he's gonna get the double dip from Fox News and Elon Musk. And then the third thing that's gonna happen is now that they're in open warfare, he's gonna get to hit him over and over and over again while he's setting up the competitor on Twitter. And the last part was a clear shot across the bow too. They said if we go forward with the lawsuit, we're gonna want the PR person at Fox News, Briganti's text messages. And so did she talk to other people in the media and leak against me? If she did, that's a breach of contract. We'll see you in court. And knowing Briganti, she almost certainly did. And she's not gonna want those text messages out there. So now Tucker's got a super strong hand, in my opinion, against Fox News, and he's using some of their tricks against them. And he's got a strong hand at Twitter. I wish it weren't the case, because I think I can't stand the guy. I think not only does he mislead you on air, and we know that definitively, but now that we've seen the text, I mean, there's so many telling things there about his racial views.
Yeah, and
they're actually even worse than what he says on air.
We can't stand Tucker, but we also can't stand Fox. So let them fight. I mean, whatever, we'll see how it plays out. But I mean, it's not like my heart goes out to either party in this situation.
100%, and I hope that they tear each other to shreds, although they probably Tucker will win. But my point is, even though we don't like Tucker or Elon Musk or Fox, our job is to be honest with you. And I think that Tucker played this really well.
It seems like that's the case. And he retreated for 2 weeks. Seems like he really thought about what he wanted to do and what his next move would be. And it seems like he has a strategy that could work. So again, we'll see how it plays out. The story is still developing, it just broke. But as we learn more, of course, we'll share it with you. For now though, why don't we move on to a break? But when we come back, we'll talk about how the Justice Department has continued its federal probe into freshman Republican lawmaker George Santos, and it appears that they are filing criminal charges against him. He could be appearing in court this week. We've got that story and more coming right up. All right, back on TYT.
Taryn Tots and Teresa Elaine are American heroes because they just joined by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. You guys are awesome. We appreciate it. And you'll get to have all the TYT content available to you. Chef Rockstar gifted 5 Young Turks memberships. See, this is our community. We look out for one another, and I love that you guys gift memberships to one another as well. Everyone, wherever you're watching, tyt.com/join, or just hit the join button below the video if you're watching on YouTube. That you can also upgrade through there. We appreciate all of it. Rock and Roll Forever says, this is in now YouTube members. Isn't Elon late on the rent? Yeah, so look, I'm intensely curious about what he's gonna do with Twitter. So far, it appears that every move he made was wrong / a disaster, except the Tucker Carlson move. So let's see how it turns out. Taryn Tots, who just joined, says Tucker will probably go on Bill Maher and compare him being fired to Bill being fired by Comedy Central. You mean ABC? He was originally on ABC when he was fired, Bill Maher. Almost certainly, and Bill Maher will almost certainly go halfway along with his story about how he's the victim. He'll push back a little bit, right? That's my guess. But then they'll commiserate about how they have been censored and they're the true martyrs and heroes. And Bill Maher will put them up on a pedestal. And that's what Bill does these days. I wish it wasn't the case, but that's usually the case, right. And look at that, you join as a member, boom, great comment, exactly right. Miss Anonymous 617 says, does Tucker want some cheese without wine? Okay, fair. Mama Bear Dragon says, this is great and all, but his voters don't care, and establishment is pushing Biden. Turd sandwich versus giant douche part 2. No thanks. Look, Mama Bear Dragon, hang in there. I don't think that these are gonna be the only candidates. It's unacceptable. I know we won't accept it. Fun P says, Trump still has 5 to 4 more convictions coming. That's true, by the way, and so I don't think any one conviction by itself makes any difference to Republican voters. But by the time you get to the 3rd or 4th conviction, it might affect voters, Republican voters, because they might begin to think he might not win. And that actually would move them. Not, oh, he's a rapist, he's a liar, he's a con man. Don't care, don't care, don't care. Oh, he might lose to a Democrat. Well, the whole point of Trump is to own the libs. If we lose to the Democrats, then there's no point to Trump.
I'm gonna say something that's gonna offend members of our audience, and I don't mean to offend you, but this is the truth. There is a difference between Democratic voters and Republican voters. Democratic voters are scared constantly, and it's very easy to manipulate them into supporting candidates they don't like because they're buying into fear-mongering from the Democratic establishment about how this is our only shot, this is our only way of beating Trump. It's a little different with Republican voters. I feel like they're stronger, they're braver, and they back the candidate they want, for better or worse. I definitely think for worse in this specific context, but it is the truth.
Well, no, yes and no. So the Republican voters are super easily scared. Just say immigrant, Muslim, trans, and they'll wet themselves. But in politics, Anna's right. They go with their conviction, right or wrong. Back on TYT, Jen Canana with you guys, and of course all the members. If you want to help us do this show and get all of our content, hit the join button below the video on YouTube. Anna.
Well, there's a shocking update involving George Santos. Federal prosecutors have officially filed criminal charges against freshman Republican Representative George Santos. Now, these are charges brought forward by the Department of Justice, and while we don't know what the exact charges are, we do know that he will appear in court this week. According to CNN's reporting on this, the exact nature of the charges couldn't immediately be learned, but the FBI and the Justice Department public integrity prosecutors in New York and Washington have been examining allegations of false statements in Santos's campaign finance filings and other claims. And so, as I mentioned, he is very likely to appear in court this week. In fact, as early as tomorrow, Santos is expected to appear as soon as Wednesday at federal court in New York's Eastern District, where the charges have been filed under seal, which is why we don't know what the exact charges are at this moment. But we will learn pretty soon, I imagine. Now, this comes after Santos has been under investigation in multiple jurisdictions and by the House Ethics Committee. In fact, the Federal Election Commission was also investigating George Santos, but the DOJ reached out to the government agency and let them know, hey, we got this, we're getting involved now, and we're gonna take over this investigation now. And I do think that this is very likely gonna have to do with some, potential financial crimes, whether it's campaign finance or literally stealing money through charitable efforts that he started. So for instance, there are allegations that he broke campaign finance laws. There are allegations that he violated federal conflict of interest laws. There have also been some accusations regarding his charitable organization. He had allegedly raised money for an Iraq War veteran's dog, and apparently that money never went to the veteran. That's what the accusation is. So there's a lot going on here. There's also the accusation that he was the mastermind behind a credit card fraud scheme. There's a lot to get into, but we'll see how this all plays out. And I'm glad that the Department of Justice is doing its job and going after this guy who very clearly loves to lie to people, but also potentially scam people.
Okay, so lying as a politician is not a crime.
It's the most protected thing in the world.
Yeah, by the way, legally, constitutionally, and through the law, Anna's right. It is the most protected thing. Politicians are allowed to lie in Congress. They're allowed to lie on air. They're allowed to lie in their ads. They're allowed to lie nonstop, and they do. If you were going to arrest politicians for lying, you'd have to arrest at least 500 out of the 535 people in Congress. And so now the mainstream media won't tell you that. They say those are beloved, honorable politicians. There's only a couple of them who lie, like George Santos and Donald Trump. No, that's not remotely true. Both Republicans and Democrats lie, and they lie in a massive way, okay? That's not the issue here. So the issue is you still are not allowed to break laws. And so what are the laws that are potential here? Again, that we don't have the leak for, we know that the case is coming, but they do not have the information on what the charges are. But we can easily speculate, as Anna began to do there. So first of all, when you run a scam charity, that's fraud. And if you did that and you're not part of the establishment or the elites or anything like that, you're definitely going to jail, okay? So Santos is in Congress now, but they've really kind of shunned him. So he doesn't have a big power base. So he's left a little bit exposed. So they can pursue fraud charges against him in a criminal fashion. Now remember, Donald Trump has already admitted to fraud and paid a giant civil settlement. He did that on a couple of fronts. He ran a fake charity and a fake university. And he had to admit that they were both fake and that he was basically just using it to steal people's money. And he paid giant settlements for it, but he didn't go to jail. Why? Because he was definitely part of the elites in the establishment, even though he claims to be against the establishment. The fact that he's powerful protected him from going to jail. Santos does not have that kind of protection. So if he's convicted of a criminal fraud, probably he will go to jail, okay? So that's point number one. Point number two is campaign finance laws are real and necessary because look, we nearly legalized bribery because you could give literally over $100 million in campaign contributions, and they could funnel a lot of that money to their own properties, to their own businesses, as Donald Trump did. But you still can't just break those laws and take bribes or take ill-gotten money and put it into your own campaign, depending on the definition of ill-gotten, etc. Right? There are some laws, and you need those laws so that they don't do out-and-out bribery and go, forget the $100 million in campaign contributions. Here's $100 million in your pocket.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
So I would hope that Republicans who love the slogan "Drain the Swamp" would agree with us that that kind of corruption is unacceptable, right? So they must enforce those laws. Again, there's always a Donald Trump exception because Republicans who generally hate corruption, the Republican voters, which I give them credit for, when it comes to Donald Trump, they go, no, he's allowed to break campaign finance laws. It's no big deal that he did that with Stormy Daniels, etc. But Santos does not get the exception, so he could be in significant trouble.
In fact, in the past, there have been lawmakers people who have been elected into office who broke campaign finance laws were prosecuted and went to prison for it, right? I mean, I'm trying to remember specific examples, but it has happened. It's not unprecedented. And these are politicians who were considered far more, I guess, credible, far more powerful than George Santos is at this very moment.
Yeah, there's a guy named James Traficant who broke a number of laws. I forget exactly if it was campaign finance or fraud or combination thereof. He went to prison. He ran from prison. There, Duke Cunningham, a Republican from California, did massive fraud.
Yep.
He has one of my favorite stories. On his way to the press conference to cry that he found Jesus and regrets it, he took a laundry bag full of cash and threw it out of his car onto his wife's lawn. And then apparently on the drive from the laundry bag to the press conference, he found Jesus. Okay, so there's been crooks in Congress for a long, long time. George Santos comes from a rich tradition, okay? And my point about having his feet in both camps, he's credible these days because in the establishment's mind, because he's a congressman. But the rest of Congress rejects him and the rest of the establishment rejects him. So he's not quite credible. So there might be a compromise because this is all about power, guys. It isn't about the truth, right? The compromise might be, okay, no, you can't run again and you're driven out of Congress. But you did run a nice scam and you did get one foot inside the establishment. So it's not like we're gonna put you in prison like a regular person. So that might be the compromise here, but we're a long way away from there.
So we'll see how this plays out. Kevin McCarthy was asked to comment about the criminal charges. And apparently he said that they will look into the charges before determining if he thinks Santos should be removed from Congress. Quote, I'll look at the charges, the California Republican said, so.
Okay, one last thing. The giant hypocrisy of the media. John McCain is one of the most famous people to be involved in campaign finance violations. He was part of a giant scam and he got caught, okay? And it nearly ended his career. He was part of 5 Congress people who were caught in that scam where he was gonna take money. That's why he later pretended to be a champion of getting money out of politics, okay? Because he actually was the guy who was involved in a scam to get money for his votes. Did he get the George Santos treatment from the media?
He did not.
He did not. Even though he has probably the most famous case. Why didn't he get that treatment? Because he loves wars, he loves tax cuts for the rich, he loves giving everything away to the powerful, or he did. And that's why to this day, if you speak ill of John McCain anywhere, the mainstream, forget the right wing, remember he's a Republican. The mainstream media will turn around and just rip your head off. How dare you? John McCain is holy. So understand the hypocrisy here as they pile on George Santos, but leave all their corrupt buddies alone.
Well, let's move on to yet another story involving corruption. This is an ongoing story having to do with the corruption of the United States Supreme Court. A federal judge who is set to hear the case against mifepristone, or the abortion pill, did not get sworn in a public building. In fact, he was sworn in the library of billionaire mega donor Harlan Crow. And the fact that he has such cozy ties to Harlan Crow should be a concern, considering Harlan Crow is a Republican mega donor. This judge gets sworn in his library, his private library. And this is one of the judges in a 3-judge panel for the 5th Circuit who will make a decision about whether mifepristone should be blocked for the rest of the country, meaning women who rely on that pill or who might need that pill in order to have a medical abortion would not be able to do so. So ProPublica journalist Justin Elliott, who has been reporting on the Crows and the corruption that they're involved in with Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, recently resurfaced an image that I want to show you. So if you take a look at this tweet, he writes, a detail from our story today. Ted Cruz tweeted this photo of Clarence Thomas swearing in 5th Circuit Judge James Ho. Turns out this is in the billionaire Harlan Crow's private library, and flight records show Crow's jet dispatched to DC and back to Dallas before and after the event. So let me just say that fireplace is massive. I like.
No, look, guys, it looks like some sort of like movie where there's a rich villain You know, it's almost like a James Bond movie, and he takes you to his den where there's this massive fireplace, where obviously someone will be ritually sacrificed later in the evening.
It looks like Downton Abbey. It looks like they went to the set of Downton Abbey to do the swearing-in ceremony.
Now, look, guys, we're gonna get back to the substance, which is super important.
It is.
But one more fun thing. It also gives me a little Get Out vibe. Like, hey, Clarence, come to our retreat in this fancy place with a lot of rich people. Everything's gonna be okay. Okay, right. Maybe Clarence Thomas reached out to this Judge Ho at some point when there was a flashlight taken. Get out. Okay, but neither one of them did, and they're doing exactly what Harlan Crow wants now.
That's exactly right. So let's get back to the FDA mifepristone case, because that's where James Ho, this fairly new judge for the Fifth Circuit, comes in. And again, he's part of a 3-judge panel that will hear that case and make a decision about that case. Before we learn more about Ho and what his political leanings happen to be, which I'm sure you can already take a guess, let's do a refresher on what the case is involving the FDA's approval of mifepristone.
A conservative federal judge in Texas ruled Friday that the FDA improperly approved the abortion pill mifepristone 23 years ago, ignoring legitimate safety concerns about the drug.
The order yesterday was all about righting a wrong.
Mifepristone is one of 2 approved pills that are used together to carry out more than half of legal abortions in this country. The FDA insists the drug is safe and that serious complications are rare, as administration officials warned that the legal battle in Texas could have far-reaching implications.
When you turn upside down the entire FDA approval process, you're not talking about just mifepristone. You're talking about every kind of drug.
So now the Department of Justice is challenging that Texas judge's decision on blocking access to mifepristone, because in his words, the FDA did not do its due diligence in approving the drug and that the drug is allegedly unsafe. It's all nonsense. This is an activist judge who was appointed by Donald Trump. But the problem is, 2 of the judges in the Fifth Circuit, where that decision is facing appeal, happen to be Trump appointees who are also activist judges. And the 3rd judge is also a bit of an issue. So we'll talk about the other 2 in just a moment, but let's talk about James Ho here, right? So James Ho doesn't have a great history if you want to maintain and protect reproductive rights in this country. His biases are pretty significant. So he was nominated by Donald Trump to serve in the 5th District. He has written some pretty aggressive conservative opinions on all things having to do with reproductive rights. For instance, in a 2019 concurring opinion, Ho said that a trial judge's ruling, which struck down a 15-week abortion ban and which was affirmed by the 5th Circuit under the then standing Roe precedent, displayed an alarming disrespect for the millions of Americans who believe that babies deserve legal protection during pregnancy as well as after birth, and that abortion is the immoral, tragic, and violent taking of innocent human life. So his views on abortion are very clear. At the risk of going off on too large a tangent, his thoughts on government corruption are also pretty terrible. For instance, Ho's first opinion was a dissent in a case involving limits on campaign contributions in Austin, Texas. Candidates for municipal elections, meaning people like mayors and city council representatives who represent fewer than 100,000 people, are barred from accepting donations more than $350. Crow seems to have a problem with this. Okay, so a 3-judge panel on the appeals court upheld the ordinance, and a majority of judges on the court voted to keep it that way, but not Ho. Ho took a different approach, penning a 13-page dissent arguing the full court should hear the dispute. Ho said the contribution limit violated the First Amendment. So he's one of these guys who believes in unlimited campaign donations in all elections, including local elections in places like Dallas. I'm sorry, Austin, Texas.
So understand how important that is, because that's exactly what allows Harlan Crow to buy all the politicians. So you say, but wait, these guys aren't politicians, they're judges. Exactly. You need the judges to say it's okay to bribe the politicians. So he gets the judges, he bribes the judges so that he can bribe the politicians. It is kind of brilliant. Now, to be fair, Harlan Crow didn't come up with that system. Back in 1971, Lewis Powell did and Richard Nixon did. That's a long story that's in my book, Justice is Coming. Now back to Ho. On abortion, Anna, I do have to disagree with you. Now, those are his personal opinions. I'm sure that he's going to keep that out of his decisions because I hear in confirmation hearings all the time from judges and eventually justices that they just call balls and strikes.
Right.
And they don't have their own political opinions affect their decisions at all. Now, as it turns out, magically, miraculously, all of their opinions happen to be based on exactly their political opinions on the Supreme Court and lower than the Supreme Court and all of the court system, including the one that Judge Ho is in the lower courts. But it's just a coincidence, a total coincidence. So I'm sure that he'll be fair in this issue. No, of course not. He's going to rule against the pill. Everybody knows him. Everybody knows that at least 2 out of the 3 are going to vote against it.
I think this is such an interesting case, though, Cenk, because this is a rare situation in which these conservative activist judges need to choose between their so-called conservative values and their absolute love for corporate power.
Yeah.
Because the Texas federal judge's ruling in blocking the FDA's approval of mifepristone has an impact on all other prescription drugs. Right? That threatens all other prescription drugs. Pharmaceutical companies, they don't like this.
So we talked about this before, and that was gonna get to my last point, which is that, look, this Fifth Circuit panel is like not just deeply right wing, but fundamentalist and has a history of caring a lot about religious fundamentalism, right? But we talked about how the Supreme Court and other courts, no matter how conservative they are, at the end of the day, will rule actually on our side. Why? Because they all of a sudden found a conscience? No, because their side is not necessarily the Republican side or the right-wing side. It is the corporate side. So when the drug companies say, you will not mess with our already wonderfully corrupt system that we have going on at the FDA, where they approve whatever the hell we tell them to approve, okay? All those judges will go scurrying back to their corporate bosses, including Harlan Crow. And so I don't know Harlan Crow's religious views, but if he's like most right-wing businessmen, that is a far second fiddle to his business interests.
That's exactly right. I mean, that wood for that massive fireplace, not cheap, not cheap.
No.
Okay, and finally, I do want to make sure you guys are fully aware and informed on who the other 2 judges are on that panel. Look, and this is why it's so frustrating that Dianne Feinstein continues to be a problem for the Senate Judiciary Committee, because without her participation, it is difficult to confirm federal judges, which we obviously need to do while Democrats are in charge in the Senate. And we have, of course, Biden appointing federal judges. With that said, though, here's what the Fifth Circuit looks like. You have James Ho, and then you have this. The other 2 judges on the panel are Trump appointee Corey Wilson, who voted for a 6-week abortion ban as a Mississippi state lawmaker, and George W. Bush appointee, or nominee, I should say, Jennifer Elrod, who said Obamacare was a fraud on the American people. So they're very conservative judges, and conservative judges are, I think all judges happen to be activist judges. Let's keep it real.
Yeah.
Like let's stop lying to ourselves. So this isn't a comment specifically for right-wing judges. Judges are activist judges. They have biases just like anyone else. But in this case, this particular court, the Fifth Circuit, is deeply conservative and very likely will uphold the Texas judge's decision on the FDA. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
So look, especially the last 2 wrinkles here, especially in cases where evidence is not that important. You're talking about judicial philosophy as opposed to like a whodunit, did this happen or did that happen? So even with Trump appointees, when they were given the 60 some odd cases that Trump and his allies brought after the 2020 election, the judges were forced to say, yes, but where's your evidence? Like, this is a courtroom, you have to present exhibits and evidence, and we're super happy to hear it. So where's the evidence of fraud? And Giuliani and the other lawyers said on the record, we have no evidence, right? And so that's why Trump can lose those cases. But when it comes to a question of, can a judge overrule the FDA? Well, that's just a judicial question, and they can go any direction they like with that. Then they will choose whatever they want. This court happens to be this particular Fifth Circuit panel happens to be such religious fundamentalists. Based on their history, it would be surprising if they didn't rule against the abortion pill. But like I told you, at the end of the day, the corporate goons are the ones in charge. And Anna's absolutely right. Roe v. Wade, if you're my real opinion, and one I've said all throughout these 21 years we've been on the air in the Young Turks, even though I think Roe was an excellent piece of legislation. Unfortunately, it wasn't legislation, and I think that it was activist judges that said yes to Roe. Okay, from the left. Having said that, Citizens United is activist judges from the right that legalized bribery, and they did it in other cases as well. That's the heart of my book, and that's the #1 problem, which is that activists, in fact, the right wing came up with the idea of activist judges to take over the court so that they could institute corporate rule. And that's a literal memo, and like I said, I write about it in Justice is Coming.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole reason why the Federalist Society exists. That's the whole point. We gotta take a break. When we come back, Tucker makes another appearance in our show, this time with more emails and text messages that give you a sense of just how dysfunctional things were at Fox. That and more coming up, don't miss it.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was too strong coffee? Yes, new, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at toostrongcoffee.com/TYT.
That's 300 million, that's a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world. We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 20 billion views. Damn. All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Billy B. Taylor. What do you know? Billy says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Jenkins Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right?
Wow, man.
I can see the voice.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable, Senator Sanders. Welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted. Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoppyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
Oof.
Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Desiree D, Radiant Goddess, Jeffrey Halleck, Jennifer Morgan Henley. They're all new members on YouTube. We appreciate it. You guys are American heroes. They hit the join button below the video on YouTube. And Progressive Boomer gifted 5 Young Turks memberships on YouTube, and so did Nerve 2005 gifted 1. You guys are all amazing. We appreciate you so much. And you get all of our content as well, including the 2 episodes we did of Old School last night with Ben and I, where we had a great time. So make sure you check that out if you're a member. Thank you for making this show possible. Anna.
Well, we have more text messages from Tucker Carlson and email exchanges that we should get into. The Daily Beast has obtained the latest round of email exchanges between Tucker Carlson and his former Fox News colleagues. What seems to be a pattern that we're learning through these leaks and from these messages is that Tucker felt trapped at Fox, even though he was, raking in $20 million a year thanks to that pretty lucrative contract with Fox News. So let's get into it. Here's what he said. Newly revealed texts show Carlson complaining about Trump's election fraud lies hurting the right-wing cause. He says it's so sad, he's gonna break some stuff. He already is. I wish I knew where to run, but I'll die here. Meaning die here at Fox News reporting on Trump.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. So number one, that tells me that he wasn't quite as rich from the Swanson fortune as we thought, because if you have a couple $100 million bucks, the $20 million a year that Fox is paying you is still material, but not the end of the world, right? So I think that he mainly, it appears, got most of his own personal money from media as opposed to the Swanson fortune that he inherited, right? So that's one thing that it tells me, because these are private texts that he definitely didn't think were ever going to be released. So it's a rare occasion where we get to see an honest Tucker Carlson that actually tells you, because he's not telling you, the audience, he's telling a friend and an ally at the time what he actually thinks. So he thinks, I'm stuck here at Fox News, I hate it.
That's so crazy. And it's not the first time he said that. So previous reporting on these exchanges indicated that he had said something similar before. So I've got 4 more years here. I'm stuck with Fox. Got to do whatever I can to keep our numbers up and our viewers happy.
But look at that. See, that's so interesting because he keeps talking about how he's got to keep the viewers happy and he's got to keep lying to them to keep them happy. Lying about how Donald Trump is great when he actually thinks he's a demonic force, a destroyer, and he hates him, right? So if he was free and wasn't like, he feels like he's compelled to lie, but not because necessarily Fox News is making him lie. Remember, Fox News actually told the truth on election night, And Tucker got mad about it. We also know that from the texts. So he was livid and trying to get reporters fired for telling the truth about the election. So he actually feels more captured by the audience than he does by Fox News executives.
Let's go to graphic 4, because I want to get into specifics in regard to reporters he wanted fired for actually reporting the truth, right? And I think it's probably because since he was pandering to his audience, reporters fact-checking Donald Trump probably made him look bad. I think that's what his line of thinking was. So Carlson let Jesse Waters know his anger toward correspondent Jackie Heinrich, whom Carlson and Sean Hannity wanted fired for fact-checking a Trump tweet. He stated, quote, "This girl apparently works for us in the news division, though I'd be stunned if she's ever broken a story," Carlson tweeted or texted. She was on Twitter last night calling out Hannity and accusing Trump of planning to steal the election. Can't continue.
Now remember, Tucker Carlson thinks that Donald Trump is lying.
Yeah.
And he didn't win. But he's livid that a reporter would actually say something true on Fox News. He's like, get her fired. She's gonna embarrass the rest of us by saying something that's true. I mean, she disagreed with Hannity when Hannity was telling a perfectly good lie. That's just amazing.
Okay, so I actually wanna have a conversation about this audience capture angle to his text, because I think it's fascinating, and I don't think that this is something that only impacts hosts at Fox News. I think this impacts everyone, including rinky-dink YouTube creators, Twitch creators, it doesn't matter, right? Because at this point, all of us are kind of siloed off into our ideological corners. And as a result, if you have built an audience based on a particular political leaning or particular political ideology, if you ever say anything that threatens that ideology or counters that ideology, the audience loses its mind, right? I think that happens across the board all the time. So like this notion of, I want to speak freely. Okay, clearly he wasn't speaking freely at Fox, because internally he's exchanging messages indicating that like he can't stand Trump, he's a demonic force, the election wasn't stolen, he's doing all this damage to the Republican Party. But then publicly, he was telling the audience exactly what they wanted to hear, which was that, oh yeah, there was election fraud and poor Trump and Antifa stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Like he told all sorts of lies publicly to appease the audience. I just think it is a problem. And I think the right thing to do is say what needs to be said regardless of how your audience reacts. But there are very few people in the media who are willing to do that.
So, and I think you're making a super interesting point.
Of course I am.
Okay. Because if you take that just one step further, you realize in Tucker's mind, the censorship is not coming from Fox News. It's coming from the audience. The audience isn't allowing him to speak freely. So he's not mad at Fox News. He's mad at his own audience. But now that he's gone to Twitter, is that gonna change?
No.
Because number one, we know what Tucker's real opinions are, and they are deeply right-wing and potentially even more racist than what he says on air. So, okay, I guess Elon Musk will let you say that. Okay, fine. So if Fox News was keeping you on a leash about your even more racist views, okay, then you're unleashed on that, and I get it, right? But you're still gonna wanna get an audience, so you're still gonna have to tell them that Trump's their daddy and he's the most honest, wonderful, angelic guy in the world,
right,
when you don't believe that at all, and we all know you don't believe that. So you didn't get rid of the censorship at all, because it's the audience that's censoring you. Now, by the way, Anna's also right that that happens all across the political spectrum.
Yep.
Okay, and so we are very vigilant about it here, and we've time and time again said to our own audience, we love you, brothers and sisters, but the orthodoxy that is coming from our side is not correct. And whether it was Obama's the greatest politician president of all time, or the Democrats know what they're doing, the Democrats are honest, or now with some leftists saying, oh no, only the most radical position is the correct position. We've defied all that. Find me someone else that has. Because most people are tough guys until it's their own audience. Then all of a sudden, when it's their audience, whichever slice of the political spectrum it is, they melt. And they go, oh yes, sir, absolutely, sir, what do you want to hear? No, you've got to deliver the truth, whether it hurts or not. You've got to be honest, and none of these guys are. And of course, Tucker Carlson is actually the perfect example of the guy who's the least honest. So on Twitter, he's gonna find himself in the same exact cage he was at Fox News.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we have more for you, including MSNBC has a panel discussion just tearing CNN apart for platforming Donald Trump. And I disagree with them. We've got that story and more coming up. Might have a debate, we'll see how it goes.
All right, back on the social break here. Let's go to YouTube Super Chat. Oh, by the way, don't forget our podcasting network. So wherever you get your podcasts, get our shows, including some just audio only shows. So make sure you're checking that out. And one more thing to check out, guys. Our newsletter is excellent. It's pretty much the only progressive newsletter in the country. tyt.com/newsletter. Sign up now. You can use the QR code or just go to tyt.com/newsletter to sign up. All right, let's go to Super Chat. Fatty Iyaduma writes in. Oriatuma. Cenk, I've been watching TYT since I was 14 and looked up to you in so many ways, your company, your law degree, and your confidence. I'm 22 now and starting law school at Yale thanks to your influence. Wow.
Oh my God, thoughts and prayers. I'm just kidding, I'm kidding. Congrats.
So look, I really appreciate you saying that. You're wonderful for saying that. But mainly, I just want to congratulate you. That is a hell of a thing to do. And so congrats and go get them, okay? And do good in the world. That's what we're trying to do, okay? Bring some positive change, and you can. Hildegard's Goat says, most Tucker viewers are elderly, doubtful that they'll follow him from cable TV to the internet.
That's
Twitter.
A great point.
A lot of people have been making this point. A lot of our members have.
How come I didn't think of that?
Well, it's good. That's why we do the show with the members, okay? And it's true. Hildegard's Goat, $100 Blue Apron gift card, rewards at tyt.com to claim it. I'm pretty sure that you're a member. Yes, you are. And they say thoughts. Love you guys. Keep up the great work. Well, so to you and all other folks that wrote in about that, I hear you, but Twitter has a different advantage, and Twitter does have younger viewers. But remember, if they just change the algorithm and serve Tucker's show to everybody, then he's going to get a younger audience and maybe larger. So on the other hand, other folks, and I wish I could give you all credit here, wrote in saying, yeah, but if they serve Tucker's show to everybody, I'm leaving Twitter. And before I was like, I'm never gonna leave Twitter. I think a lot of people say that and they don't mean it. Well, that's a circumstance under which a lot of people might leave Twitter. So who knows, who knows?
No one's leaving Twitter.
All right,
please.
we'll see. Kenneth Backwin, thank you for the $20. We appreciate it, you're awesome. Mazin Ayub just wrote in, thank you. We thank you right back. Camp Run Amok says, does Trump have to register as a sex offender now? No, unfortunately he doesn't because it's not a criminal conviction. We'll be back. TYT, Chang and Anna with you guys. More news.
Big debate regarding CNN and its decision to host a town hall featuring Donald Trump next week. Let's talk about it.
I think the hubbub and the frustration that's out there is as much a reflection of the fact that they're giving Trump airtime as a lack of confidence that CNN's going to do it well, and then the format, which is, they keep saying he's going to answer questions from citizens. It's not about them engaging in journalism. It really is about just giving him sort of a platform. And so it does feel like a laundering.
CNN is planning to host a town hall featuring Donald Trump. And the panel over at MSNBC that you're hearing from is not happy about it. Now, Trump hasn't been on CNN. He hasn't done a town hall or debate on CNN for a very long time, since the 2016 presidential election. Joy Reid hosted this panel that featured Angelo Carusone from Media Matters and Charlie Sykes from The Bulwark. They came on to basically criticize CNN for this, trash them for giving Trump a platform. And I'm really, really curious what you all think, what Cenk thinks about Trump going on CNN for this town hall. I disagree with much of what they're saying here. So why don't we hear a little more from the arguments being made, and then we'll discuss.
Republicans, Democrats, insurrectionists, everybody's on the air. Your thoughts, Angelo?
I mean, I get a little uncomfortable with the false coequivalences and false balance, if that's the position that they've taken, because it's kind of a reflection of the larger posture that CNN has had over the last year or so, which is to basically mollify all of their right-wing critics, or at least to attempt to mollify them by validating even the most bad faith attacks on the network from them, and then shift their focus to try to appeal to them to come back on the channel with all sorts of concessions or sort of gimmies. And I think, yeah, of course he's the Republican frontrunner. There's newsworthiness around it. It is absurd in some ways, but we have to cover it. I appreciate that. What I don't appreciate is the circumstances and the timing. It feels kind of odious, like an attempt to goose their ratings ahead of not just the moment that we're in terms of Fox sort of sliding, but this big upfront event that's happening. So I think that's a part of it, and I find that a little unsettling.
So, Cenk, I'm curious what you think, because I think the argument that drawing a false equivalency between someone like Donald Trump and whoever the Democratic frontrunner is at the moment, of course it's Joe Biden, that's a valid point, right? Because I do think that there are pretty significant differences. This isn't a typical Republican running against a typical Democrat. Donald Trump tried to overturn the results of the 2020 election. That point is made loud and clear, and that is about the only thing I agree with. But whether we want to believe it or not, whether we want to accept it or not, Trump, as it currently stands, is the front runner for the Republican Party. And pretending like he doesn't exist and going out of your way to try to suppress his message isn't gonna work. It's not gonna work. So I just think it's such a weak position to be like, don't give this guy who gets a ton of attention anyway a platform? Really?
Yeah. So 3 things to say at least. So number one, complaining that they're doing a town hall for the guy currently leading in the race. He's leading by 30 points in the Republican primary and 7 points over Biden, is absurd. Of course, the guy who's running for president, very likely to win the Republican nomination, and at this point likely to be president, of course you have to interview him. Of course you have to do appearances with him. What, you're gonna shut him out the whole time? That doesn't make any sense. So that's, to me, is super obvious. But so let me pause there on point 1. Why are they even talking about this? Because that seems preposterous, right? Because mainstream media is used to shutting out voices they don't like. They do it to progressives all the time, but we don't have the power to fight back. So in 2015, as Bernie Sanders closed that 50-point lead on Hillary Clinton, one of the most remarkable political events of my lifetime, he was barely on cable news and not at all on primetime news, okay? They completely and utterly froze him out because they're like, well, we don't like your message. We're a corporate rule and you have an anti-corporate message. So we just won't put you on air. Problem solved, okay? So that's their normal MO. That's why they're like so frustrated. They're like, do we have to let him on? We don't like him. Well, in the good old days, we just slam the door shut on anybody who we don't like, and the public never even hears from them and we win. Well, sad day for you. Those days don't exist anymore. And remember, we don't like Donald Trump. We're not saying like, oh, yay, I want to hear from Donald Trump. No, but we have to be fair to everyone, and you have to do your job as journalists, which gets to point number 2. The real problem here, guys, is that there are no journalists on cable news. Because if they were real journalists, yeah, sure, interview them and rip them a new one, right? Here, Donald Trump, I offer you a town hall on the Young Turks. Come and see, okay? Come and find out. Now, he's not gonna come on here because we'd actually ask him tough questions. He's going on CNN because the assumption is they're news actors. They're not gonna ask him any actually tough questions. They're gonna ask pretend tough questions.
I think that this issue is much broader and more widespread than you're giving credit to. Okay, so you just invited Trump on for a town hall at TYT.
Oh, damn right.
Like, I jump in it. Like, that would be fantastic.
Anytime,
right.
Donald Trump.
But I can't help but remember the kind of reaction we got when we announced that we were gonna have Matt Gaetz on the show.
Yeah.
Okay, the insane meltdown that transpired, all of the other progressives who do shows automatically and preemptively attacking us for even entertaining that idea.
Who cares?
Right, no, but I'm saying this because I see this as a huge problem on the left. Do you believe in the ideology? Do you believe in the policies that we're pushing for? Do you believe that what we're pushing for has widespread appeal? Are you secure in being able to market these ideas to American voters and actually beat out the dysfunction and the disgusting corruption that you see with right-wing politicians? Because I believe that we have popular policy positions. So I'm not afraid to duke it out. I'm not afraid to exchange ideas knowing that my ideas are better. But for some reason, there's like this level of fear and weakness on the left, broadly speaking the left, that I find so embarrassing.
No, but look, Anna, you're being a little unfair because you're-
Am I?
Yeah, because you're addressing not the left, but a very specific narrow portion of the left that are left-wing pundits on Twitter and et cetera.
No. We just showed you corporate Democrat media, right, which is MSNBC.
Yeah.
I just gave you the example of what we dealt with further left people when it came to Matt Gaetz coming on our show.
Like all of those people are in media. Like if you asked a progressive voter, hey, do you want to take your ideas in a battle against the right wing? I would be shocked if the overwhelming majority, over 90%, wasn't like, yeah, let's go get the sons of bitches. But when you talk to a corporate left wing, which isn't actually left wing at all, they're like, no, shut out any dissenting voices. That's obvious, they're not at all left. When you go to the leftists on Twitter and social media and hosts, yeah, they have a problem, and I don't agree with them. So whoever it is, and I'm not smearing it, I'm not painting with a broad brush and saying all of them, but whoever is in the camp of don't platform, what if they say something we don't like? Sorry, I don't know, be better, do better. We could kick any right-winger's ass. If you can't and you're scared of them, go into a different line of work, okay? So I don't agree with that at all, whether it comes from the left, the right, or wherever the hell it comes from. But guys, back to this Trump town hall. The reason why Trump is kind of excited about it, the reason why MSNBC is worried about it, is because they know CNN's gonna be soft. Everybody knows they're gonna be soft. And by the way, look at the format. The format is already super soft. It's a town hall of Republican voters, and they're letting them ask all the questions. So it's going to be 90% friendly questions. That is not a format I would agree to here on the Young Turks.
Right.
Because we're not in the propaganda business. But CNN and MSNBC are in the propaganda business. They're just doing propaganda for corporate rule, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, right? So there's a problem with the format. And yes, the host is a person who used to work for Tucker Carlson. It's uncomfortable, so nobody in media talks about it, but Caitlin Collins worked for the Daily Caller. She's a conservative. And so is she gonna ask like really tough questions of Trump? Maybe to prove her mettle on 1 or 2 instances. I'd ask 20 blistering questions. Just ask any guest we've ever had on. That's why we don't have that many guests, because we don't play patty cakes with the powerful. We actually hold them to account. Now, the final thing on this is, The correct response to Trump having a town hall on CNN isn't take his town hall away. The correct response is, well, then they got to make sure that Biden has one. In fact, Biden should lobby for 2 of those.
I know, but they know what Biden is like, and I think that's the real issue here. Let's keep it real.
Of course, the reason why they don't do that is because Joy Reid and every anchor on MSNBC and every Democrat in Washington knows that Joe Biden is ridiculously weak, and they don't want him doing a town hall because he might forget what to say, he might wander off stage, and he doesn't have anything that he could say, look, I delivered this for you. He can say, oh, I delivered for the semiconductor industry, which is not popular at all, right? So they don't want Biden on air. Well, when you don't want Biden on air, that means you've got the wrong candidate. The answer to speech is not less speech, it's more speech.
I agree with you on that wholeheartedly. I feel that the mainstream Democratic Party and their corporate media propagandists are all in cahoots in suppressing progressive challengers to Biden in the Democratic primary, right? I mean, the DNC doesn't even want to have debates. So there's that. And then you have this issue where it's like, no, let's suppress Trump's messaging because what? You think Trump's messaging is so popular and so wonderful that he's difficult to beat? If you had a decent candidate who could basically provide a message and provide a political plan that is appealing to Americans, you wouldn't be concerned about Donald Trump. But they are, because Donald Trump will, of course, engage in populist rhetoric. But will they call him out on his faux populism? Can they pivot to Biden and provide examples of Biden actually carrying out economic policies that have improved Americans' lives? That's the issue. I think the heart of the debate here that isn't being spoken is the fact that they know that Biden's a weak candidate. And they see the polling, which indicates that as it stands today, if the election were to happen today between Trump and Biden, Biden's not doing well.
Look, guys, last thing on this, there's no question Anna's right about that because Biden's down 7 points right now. That's a poll that came out this week. There is no question. He's down to a guy who's super unpopular, by the way. If you're down, you ask for town halls. But Joe Biden is not asking for any town halls. Trump is at least asking for it because he understands the value of free media, right? Biden is giving away free media. He's the president of the United States. He could have all the free media in the world. He can do a press conference every day.
Exactly.
And which is carried by all the networks.
Exactly.
He doesn't do any of that because he sucks. Oh, everyone in Washington is scandalized. Dude, he's at 36%. Wake up, wake up. No one wants Biden, but everyone in Washington is scandalized when we say it out loud.
All right, let's move on to something completely different. Let's talk about tipping robots and machines. The great tipping debate is getting real spicy as Americans across the country are now feeling pressure to not only tip human beings, meaning actual workers, but to now tip machines during self-checkout. This is actually happening. So the Wall Street Journal reported on this, and I want to give you examples to prove that this is real. So prompts to leave 20% at self-checkout machines at airports, stadiums, cookie shops, and cafes across the country are rankling consumers already inundated by the proliferation of tip screens. So I want to be clear, I'm not talking about you going to a cashier, paying for whatever you're buying from the cashier, and then seeing a screen that asks you for a tip. That happens quite often. No, I'm talking about you're at the grocery store or at the airport, and the entire process is human free. It's just you and a machine, you're doing self-checkout. You will be greeted in many cases with a screen asking you if you would like to leave a tip, which I personally think is insane. So Square, Square, whose technology powers many iPad point of sale machines, says tipped transactions were up 17% year over year at full service restaurants and 16% at quick service restaurants in the fourth quarter of 2022. And so labor experts are arguing, well, yeah, the employers here are thinking to themselves, if I can collect a little extra money by doing very little, just having this option available to people during self-checkout. Why wouldn't I do it? And one senior at American University who spoke to the Wall Street Journal about this made the best point in the piece, quote, "They're cutting labor costs by doing self-checkout. So what's the point of asking for a tip and where is it going?" And some of the employers who spoke to the Wall Street Journal about this argue, no. We actually, we like to create, even though you're doing self-checkout, we like to create a nice environment at our place of service, at our company. And so when you tip, we put it in we put it all together and then we pass it out among our staff, which there are no labor laws ensuring that they do that. So I want to be clear about that too. There's nothing that would enforce them sharing that money with the workers because there are no labor laws pertaining to tipping machines.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of a loophole. So there's 8 different problems with this. One is that the law says you can't cheat the workers on tips, but if it goes through a machine, it's a loophole. So you could say, well, they didn't tip the workers, they tipped the machine, so I can take the money, right? Now the companies, some of the companies involved say, we assure you that we're not doing that. First of all, I don't believe any of your assurances, so save it. But okay, but for the sake of argument, let's assume that they're telling the truth. But that doesn't solve the issue at all. If you feel like, oh, well, what do you mean? The tip goes, if they're being honest, it goes to the workers, and I want the workers, even if they're in the back and making the pastries, etc., I want them to get tips. No, guys, what they're trying to do is get you to pay the salaries of their employees, because they're getting X amount of money no matter what. When they add in the tips, X becomes larger, okay? It becomes X plus 2 or whatever. First of all, just more revenue for the company is already a win for them. That already increases their valuation and other metrics that they're judged by. So boom, they got more revenue from you. 2, they don't have to pay their employees as much because they could say, well, it's okay because look at all these tips you're getting. So that way they get to save money that they would have paid the employees instead of you. Third of all, there are no employees. It's a freaking computer, okay? And to me, I hate those things. Like, I didn't come here to work for your little grocery store within the airport or whatever the frick this thing is, okay? I came to buy something. Oh, no, you have to now work. You have to enter in the code. You have to do this, you have to do that. That's because they wanted to cut the employees in the first place. So don't tell me that you're doing this for the employees when those machines allowed you to fire your employees in the first place.
Exactly. First off, they shift the labor onto you, the consumer, and you are providing free labor for these companies that are using the self-checkout model, right? Now I get it, some people like self-checkout, so they don't mind providing that free labor, but please don't tip the machine. Like, I'm begging you guys, like, it is amazing how easy it is to manipulate people in this country by shaming them. So people are terrified of being shamed for not tipping the machine, and they're tipping the machine. Don't tip the machine. Do not normalize this. Do not feel shame for refusing to tip a machine at a company that is now forcing you to do self-checkout because they wanted to save labor costs, because they wanted to fire some portion of their workforce. Let's just keep it real. That is what's really happening here. But they'll feel the shame. I mean, I'll give you a few examples. Let's go to graphic 5 here. Chaya Tacos in Washington, D.C. also prompts self-service customers to leave a tip. One of the customers, Miss Jamar, the American University senior, says she tips if a friend or employee can see the screen because she's worried about the friend or employee at the company seeing that she says no. First of all, if you have friends like that, find better friends. Secondly, oh, well, what employee? You're doing self-checkout. Like, what are you talking about? And if you're talking about someone who, sometimes there's one person who kind of stands by the machines in case something goes awry. No, I would flip the screen over, show it to the employee and say, no, you deserve a better job, you deserve better pay, and we shouldn't be providing free labor for this company.
Yeah.
Period.
So look, there's 3 different things that they're doing here. For some folks, they're using shame, like, oh, somebody oversees you not tipping, right? So that's the anecdote that Anna was just telling about. For others, they're using a guilt trip, like even if no one's looking, Well, I guess if you don't want to be nice to the workers, says the corporate executive who put that machine in there to fire workers. So don't buy into their guilt trip, even if no one else is looking. But most importantly, thirdly, they're weaponizing your good nature against you.
100%.
So you're a good person and you want to help fellow employees, especially you work in the service industry or you didn't, you just empathize with human beings. You think, I guess there's somebody back there somewhere and I want to help them. But it's not your job to pay their salary. It's their employer's job to pay their salary. The tip was originally supposed to be, okay, you've got your salary, but God, you did such a spectacular job, I'm gonna give more on top.
Or your wages. And it was specifically for people working in the food industry, the food service industry, I should say, because there's a loophole to minimum wage for service workers, unfortunately, in some states, right? Where because of the restaurant industry's lobbying, you can literally pay them way below minimum wage in many states. Some states have passed laws to prevent that from happening. For instance, in California, everyone makes whatever the state minimum wage is, including service workers, right? But aside from that, the tips were meant to subsidize the workers because of how little they were getting paid in their wages. If we're talking about grocery store workers, they don't deal with that loophole.
Yeah, and guys, and if you're talking about the guys making the pastries in the back, the tips were supposed to be for the service industry. That doesn't mean you don't pay the bakers. That means the company pays the bakers, okay? They're not in the service industry. I want them making as much as humanly possible. I want a much higher minimum wage. I want better wages for everyone. I hate corporate rule, but corporations shifting that responsibility onto us rather than them doesn't help the situation at all. It's gotten so absurd. We did a story a couple of weeks ago about now landlords are demanding tips. No tips for landlords and no tips for rando machines that actually stole someone's job.
All right, we're gonna take a break. I don't know what we're gonna do next. We have a bunch of stories left and we'll figure it out.
All right, I mean, I'll tip if somebody really deserves a tip. If they really put forth the effort, I'll give them something extra. But I mean, it's tipping automatically. It's for the birds.
Let's go to our members on TYT.com. Trista says, this Tucker story sounds like a big dud. Twitter's quite literally losing active daily users by the day. Additionally, Fox News audience skews 65 plus, which is not the age group of the users of Twitter. So I gave somebody else a $100 Blue Apron gift card for that. So Trista, you get a $100 Blue Apron gift card. Rewards at TYT.com to verify that you're a member, but I see that you are to get the card. Brett Campbell, AKA Dragging My Ass, funny already, says, just got home from work. Such wonderful news about Trump. It is, at least E. Jean Carroll gets vindication for sure. Kabuki Dragon says, George Santos' reaction to the news that there are charges filed against George Santos. Quote, good thing I'm not George Santos. Could happen. Good, and a good joke too. Square Peg in a Round Hole says, what Anna says might be true about national elections, but here in Texas, Republicans regularly scare their voters into voting against what they want by repeating over and over that Democrats will ruin Texas. This happens despite a majority of Texans wanting gun control by means of raising the age to 21, background checks, a waiting period, etc. In all honesty, both parties prey on the fears of their supporters. It's just that they exploit different fears. So I think that's super fair. But in the context of politics, I still agree with Anna because, and we're not talking about you guys. You guys are generally progressive, left wing, etc. But you tell an MSNBC viewer that hasn't gone and watched online shows and tried different things, you tell them, hey, would you rather vote for a progressive who shares more of your opinions? They'll go, no, they'll lose. It's gotta be Biden, it's gotta be Hillary, right? So they scare them politically, whereas the Republicans oftentimes scare people with the issues.
Yeah, definitely,
right?
I agree with that.
So that's the distinction. Horse crap legislation says, just went on Twitter today, and for whatever reason, the first 2 tweets in my feed were Steven Crowder and Tucker Carlson. I don't follow either of them. So that's an old algorithm switch that Elon Musk made so that you can get more right-wing propaganda shoved down your throat. He said, no, I'm doing it for everybody. So I haven't seen my tweets go to other audiences anyways. But to be fair, the right wing already loves me because they love to hate a tweet against me. So I'm a little bit different. Weird Al Dragonovich says Musk is about to make Twitter a recruiting tool for the right wing and will censor progressive candidates and unions from using it to campaign and organize. This Tucker Carlson partnership should be very concerning. Look, Tucker Carlson is deeply racist, and you see it in his private text too. Elon Musk is seeing those too, and he's like, oh yeah, sounds good to me. I'd never hire Tucker Carlson, right? But Elon Musk doesn't mind it at all. So that tells you something about him. RFD Rameth Dragon says, Cenk and Anna would have Trump drooling all the way to a closed ward in the nearest hospital.
That's right.
Damn right. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Parham Samani, a YouTube member, said, Anna's totally right on this. I don't know what this is, but you're right.
Thank you.
All right, Anna, go ahead.
All right, well, why don't we hear from someone who's not right on much?
The organizations, NFL and NHL, are both certainly a lot less manly today than they were even 10 years ago, certainly 30 years ago. But if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, before the NHL started doing Pride Nights and all the rest of it, then maybe you can make an argument for the NHL. But now, and the NFL went woke too, but not to that level. NHL has Pride Nights. NFL doesn't at this point, so NFL wins.
Oh, thank God, Matt Walsh is helping us figure out which sports are manly and which sports are not manly enough. And he has deduced that the National Hockey League is apparently not manly enough because they have Pride Nights. I don't know if he knows that. Well, actually, he does know this. Hockey players get into physical fights and beat each other down. I mean, not to say that that necessarily translates to manliness, but if you're thinking about stereotypes of manliness, okay, physical fighting kind of falls in that category, no?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Look, the idea of, hey, you know what, Matt, then why don't you put on a pair of skates and get in the rink and see how it goes for you, okay?
Listen, he sits in a chair in front of a camera, just like we do, to be fair, and opines on things he likes and dislikes. How is that manlier than the hockey players? Like, I don't understand.
Okay, so look, I can't believe he's doing this unironically.
He is doing it unironically. Like, this is real. He believes this.
It's amazing. And so I know I watched longer, unfortunately, to like make sure that he wasn't kidding. Like, yeah, I'm kidding. I mean, it's not really manly or unmanly, but I don't like it because I'm a right winger and I hate gay people or whatever, right? And if he was joking around about it, like, oh, whatever, who cares, right? No, this guy's actually judging whether hockey players are tough enough. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you guys in a second about an amazing hockey fight story, but this guy cracks me up. What were you gonna say, Anna?
So, you know what? I just want to go to the next video, but let me preface it by saying, not only does he think that hockey players are not manly enough due to their support of the LGBTQ community through Pride Nights and things like that, or through wearing, he just thinks that they're too woke, and you can't be woke and manly at the same time, according to Matt Walsh. But then he also reduces hockey players and their lack of manliness to something they wear. So let's watch that.
In hockey, you've got, first of all, fighting after the play is part. I mean, that's cool. The fact that you can just beat the hell out of each other for reasons nothing to do with what's actually happening on the. I don't know. I've never watched hockey, but I guess two guys get mad at each other, they just beat the hell out of each other, and it's understood that that's what you're going to do. So that's cool. You don't have that as much in football, but at the same time, I got to deduct points based on the fact that you are on ice skates, which is a little bit, it's like that's what figure skaters use, and it's a little bit sort of dainty. You're ice skating around. You can never be fully manly on ice skates. The manlier thing is just to be on your own 2 feet, flat on the ground, or with cleats.
Okay. All right. So first of all, this guy lecturing people on manliness. I mean, that's the joke right there. It's hilarious. Second of all, his co-host was like, is he being serious? It looked like he's like, am I supposed to respond here? Because this guy's like, you're tougher than NHL players. You are. You're judging whether they're manly enough. That's hilarious. Because the league did Pride Night where they said, oh, we don't hate gay people. And so you marked them down for that, Matt. Okay, duly noted.
I just don't know how to respond to this. Like, all of this is so absurd.
No, but no one who does this without like a wink and a nod and having fun with it is actually secure in their masculinity.
No, that's exactly right. That's 100% correct.
Like, all right, so I'll tell you the hockey story real quick, and then we'll come back to more of the substantive discussion.
Why do guys do this? It seems to be mostly a male thing.
Oh, because
you guys love it, like just sit around. Oh yeah, is he manly enough? Like women don't do that.
Like
women don't do that. Like we don't sit around like, is she woman enough?
Is she female enough?
Is she feminine enough? Like we don't do that. Like why do you guys do this?
Because they want to measure themselves up to others. Look, hey,
but let me help you guys out just a little bit, okay? Hopefully you've internalized what I'm saying because I genuinely want to help you guys out.
Yeah.
When you sit around and judge the masculinity of others, it communicates to the women, or womans, as my dad would say, that you're incredibly insecure in your masculinity and you're concerned that you're not gifted in the nether regions. Like that is what it communicates to me. I'm just keeping it real. Like strength is feeling secure in yourself and not spending all your time doing like this weird armchair analysis of the masculinity of others. Like it's just strange to me.
Yeah, look, for example, if I were to come on here and go like, I'm gonna use an old school example, a new one. Greg Lloyd, who was like an awesome, fierce football player for the Steelers, or TJ Watt, is currently the same for the Steelers. If I came out here like, I'm gonna judge whether TJ Watt and Greg Lloyd are manly enough. You're like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that, right? Unless you're kidding around. Like obviously they're manly enough.
Yeah.
Like, and what is it about you that you want to compare yourself to them with some sort of, like as if you're the arbiter and okay, great, like TJ Watt, I will now judge you on whether you're manly. It's absurd, it's freaking absurd. To this hockey story that I promised you guys. So of all people, it's about Tommy Chong, kind of. So I interviewed Tommy Chong a bunch of times, and then one time, he had this great story about his brother. Tommy's grew up in Canada, actually. A lot of people think he's from LA and he's Latino. He's actually Asian from Canada. So they used to play hockey all the time. And they played it in an informal way with no refs, so it was brutal. And his brother used to play so much that one day he's going through a metal detector like 30 years later, right? And I don't know why the metal detector goes off. You'll have to go back to the podcast.
Oh my God, look at that guy next to you. He looks so feminine.
No, so feminine.
So weak.
He was part of Pride Night one night, okay? He didn't hate gay people enough feminine. So anyways, bottom line to the long story is Tommy's brother was setting it off the metal detector because he had teeth in him from like the hockey fights, and the teeth had metal in it. He still had teeth in his body from the fights that they had, but not manly enough for Matt Walsh because they did it on skates.
Wait, like
dainty. Look at this. How do clowns look at this guy and go, oh yeah, I bet Matt's the most manly guy. I think he should judge everyone else.
Should they maybe have like some rules to prevent the physical abuse that takes place during these hockey games?
Well, that was the cool part of that story by Canada. There were no rules and there were no refs.
No, I know.
And so they would tear each other apart. And as a man, I go, interesting. We're silly creatures, man. But at least I know it, okay? Instead of this fool pretending that he's the ultimate judge of manliness in a serious way.
He sits in front of a camera. It is preposterous. Come on.
Put him in the room with any of those guys and see how quickly he runs to get Depends, okay? All right, look, we got an amazing bonus episode for the members.
Yep.
What do we have?
It's gonna be good. We're gonna talk about Elizabeth Holmes and how the New York Times is laundering her reputation.
They're trying to bring back this scammer. Why? What is wrong with you guys? All right, tyt.com/join to become a member, or if you're on YouTube, hit the join button below, and we'll see you in a minute.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing news TV show in the United States of America, compared to all shows on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and roughly 30 others. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable. Donald Trump radicalized citizens. He's the chief terrorist. Republicans still want you to think that critical race theory is the greatest evil that can happen in K-12 education. It's not even taught. I guarantee you this, David. If he would have taken a knee during the national anthem to bring awareness to the need for more money for cancer research in America, he would not have had that response. It was the fact that he took a knee for black.